All right, we
There
are
we go.
live. Thank you all for joining us. Ben didn't even notice. So, by the way, for those of you who have not joined us before, the best part of our podcast is like before we start, the discussions happening off air. They're just ridiculous. I can't even repeat some of them here because they just get so off the radar. But Ben didn't even notice the title to today's podcast, and I don't know that I should tell him. And now he's looking.
I see it now.
Now he sees it. I'm asking the real question.
My hair is real.
We don't
Well,
know.
why would
Ben.
my hair not be real?
Well,
It's a
it
wig.
doesn't look real.
Does it look good?
Well, I will
Is it a
neither
decent looking
confirm or
wig?
deny that. Maybe. I'm just asking. I think we need to know if it's real because I don't think we know.
Okay.
And it looks like it may not be. It looks like one of those things where like you ever watch those shows and it's like to completely throw you for a loop, like they just take their hair off and set it like down, and it's like, oh my god, like there's something going on, right? It looks like that might be the case, and I'm just not 100% sure. So I think we
Yep.
should know at some point, is the hair real? And we may have to dive into some more Bryan Harsin conspiracy theories tonight too, because they're out there.
Brandon Harrison.
Brandon Harrison. Is that what we named him last week?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I was Brandon Harrison's boyfriend or something like that. By the way,
I don't know that we took it that far.
Fourth
It's
String
interesting
Podcast.
to do it on your own, though. This is the Fourth String Podcast, and today's been very fourth string, and we're only a minute
Wakanda forever.
and 30 seconds into it.
Fourth
It's
String
great.
Podcast. Wakanda forever. Fourth String forever.
What? Okay. Been such an what the heck is Wakanda forever?
It's the Black
Is that
Panther.
Black Panther thing? We were talking about that earlier today.
I went and saw it. You have a Panthers thing right behind you, full circle.
That's like, this is not the same thing as that Marvel crap. By the way, did you watch these guys last night? Derek Brown looked unbelievable.
He's a monster.
He is a monster. Whole defense looked great.
An Auburn player that didn't go to Liberty.
One of the few. Well, that was back in the good days where you had Malzahn as your head coach. Should bring him back. He'd be a great hire. Doing great things at Central Florida.
I think we're still paying him.
Just going to say this. Central Florida right now is ranked 22nd. What would you give Ben to be ranked 22nd right now?
I mean, if you told me at the beginning of the season that in week 11 we'd be playing Texas A&M and have the same record, I'd be thinking we were playing for the West. Yeah. Not playing for the worst in the SEC. So,
yeah. The West is
next season will be okay.
I don't know. I think the Auburn rebuild is I think it's gonna take a while. I think I have a lot of things to fix. And I will tell you, in the Auburn Bo Nix divorce, Bo Nix is coming out as the winner right now. I'll just throw that out there. I know that few things probably bring more pain to your side, but that guy looks unbelievable.
One, it wasn't a divorce. I think it was a wise choice and a business decision by Bo Nix because he was not going to perform where he was. He had no help on offensive line, and he had a terrible head coach and a bad offensive coordinator. Two, Dillingham was our OC when he was, under Malzahn, and Dillingham has done incredible things with him. And three, I'm happy for Bo. I'm happy for Bo and the success he's had. He was the same quarterback I expected against Georgia, but after that, he's been awesome.
Well, listen, let me tell you, upon further review of that Oregon-Georgia game, I've said this for years. I think there are some games throughout the college football season you kind of have to throw out. Like, I just don't give as much consideration to. Oregon, Georgia, week 1 of the year, I don't want to criticize Oregon for that game. Like, I don't want to hold that game against them. First off, it is the AD that scheduled that game years ago to go to Atlanta, Georgia, to play the Bulldogs. By the way, they scheduled this game the year Georgia went to the national championship and played Alabama in that crazy game with Tua. That's when this game was scheduled. So the Auburn AD went and watched Georgia that year, watched the championship game, and thought, oh yeah, let's go play them in Atlanta. Like, that is so stupid. But then the second piece to that, too, is this was this coaching staff's first game together with a brand new quarterback. The team hadn't been together. And if you look at Oregon since that game, it is it is night and day the difference between Oregon that game and Oregon now. And I would say that Oregon's toughest competition right now in the Pac-12 is UCLA, who they blew out a few weeks ago. So, like, Oregon should win out the rest of the year. My question would be, is that loss so ugly that just because of that one game against what we would all consider right now to be the best team in the country, are we going to just not even give Oregon a chance to redeem themselves? And this is where the playoff going to 12 teams. I've said I hated it from the beginning, but this would be the one good thing to come of it is teams like Oregon can get some redemption, which I think they deserve. Like, I think Oregon should absolutely be given an opportunity to redeem what they did in week one because it's not the same team at all.
Yep. I can see that. This season with a 4-team playoff, I think if there's any other 8-1 teams left, or whatever it is, 11-1 teams left, or even 12-1 if they're champions, whatever, they go in above Oregon because when you have a 45-3 loss?
Yeah,
That's pathetic.
It was. Well, I know, but I would take Oregon's resume over TCU's. Like, even right now, I would take Oregon's resume over TCU. But if you're telling me I'm comparing an 11-1 TCU to an 11-1 Oregon, Oregon's obviously getting the nod there. I don't know. I think what I always like to do is I like to throw out a team's best game and throw out a team's worst game. And that tells me really who you are. Like, if I'm going to bet a game and I'm looking at two teams, which granted this year, my betting started off great. Since then it's progressed. Like, literally, I think I've been 2-4 now 6 consecutive weeks. Like, I can't seem to bet 500 anymore, whatever. But when I do, what I look at is take out your best game, take out your worst game. That's what you are as a team. That was Oregon's worst game. I would take that out. Take out the game against UCLA. Look at the rest of the resume. It's a darn good football team. And I'm watching TCU's best game, the worst game. There's a reason TCU is a 3-touchdown underdog against Texas this weekend. It's because Vegas is telling you they aren't real. Like, it is. And I hate it when we do this, Ben. We have a team that, because they're undefeated, because they haven't lost, we just rank them super, 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 super high. But if you've watched TCU and you've watched Michigan and Ohio State and Georgia and Oregon and Tennessee, LSU, I would even argue like UCLA and Ole Miss, TCU doesn't even seem to be in the same realm as those teams.
I've expected TCU to lose 3 times. Somehow they keep winning. But
yeah, but it's
good luck against
they
Texas.
Don't look good doing it. It's just they're finding a way to do it, which is I'm not saying it doesn't go for anything. Like, it's something, but it's not.
Yep.
When you have a 4-team exclusive playoff,
they're in my top 10.
What's that?
Yeah, they're in my top 10. I think you'll like where I put them then, hearing your opinion.
I hope so. So let's get into our top 10. Who do you have at number 1?
Number 1 or number 10?
Number 1.
We starting from the... Oh, okay.
What do you want to do? You want to start from the back?
No. I don't know. I'm good to go number 1. Let's start number 1.
See, this is why we're 4th string. We don't plan any of this crap ahead of time. We're sitting here planning this as we're doing the show. All right. Let's start from 10 because that's a better idea than my crappy idea. So who do you have at number 10?
Number 10 is Oregon.
Oregon.
So,
what?
Yep.
At number 10?
I have 2 other teams that I like better than Oregon. And so
Hold on.
That's why they're minus
You
10.
just said Oregon's number 10, and then you just said you have 2 other teams that you like better than Oregon. Shouldn't you
Pac-12
have
teams.
9 other teams? 2 other
Two
Pac-12
other
teams.
Pac-12 teams. Yes.
Okay, well, you watched them play UCLA, right?
Yep.
Okay. Listen, my number 10 team, this is so dumb. My number 10 team is USC. USC ranks about 114th in pass defense over their past 4 games. It is one of the worst defenses, I think, in the country. You watch that defense, they maybe have one guy that could play NFL football. That's it. Other than that, it's just a bunch of like 2 and 3 star guys. It's awful. In the offense, do we even know if Jordan Addison is healthy? Because he doesn't look healthy. It's literally like the Caleb Williams, Lincoln Riley show, and that is good, by the way. I'm not at all saying that that's not a good thing, but that gets them into my top 10. It doesn't get them any higher. So USC at number 10.
Okay. So the team that Oregon beat, I have at number 9, UCLA. Now, the Oregon game there was a second quarter where UCLA got blown out 28-10. Then they had to play catch up. They couldn't come over that hump. But between UCLA, Oregon, and upcoming USC, I think it stacks USC over both. And the UCLA game with USC will kind of decide where they land in that one. But I've got them at number 9.
I actually have UCLA at number 9 as well. So we're right on the money with that. Here's the thing about UCLA. The offense is fantastic, but like USC, the defense actually leaves a lot to be desired. So there's only 3 teams that have played, or I'm sorry, 4 teams that have played UCLA and not scored 20 points. Bowling Green, who scored 17, Alcorn State, who's bad. No, wait, Alabama State, sorry, who's not great. Colorado, who might be worse than Alabama State, and then Stanford, who can't get any of their fans to show up to games. Those are the only teams to not score 20 points. Here are teams that have scored 20 or more points on them. South Alabama, who UCLA beat by
USA.
31. Yep. Washington, who put up 32 on them. Utah put up 32 on them. Oregon put up 45 on them, and Arizona State put up 36 on them. So that is the glaring weakness right now with UCLA is on the defensive side, particularly the pass defense. It's not as bad as USC's, and I think UCLA has more offensive depth than USC has right now, which is why I've got them ahead at 9. But when I start looking at these top 10 teams, I start looking for weaknesses, glaring weaknesses, and that defense for UCLA, it is a big one.
Yep. Agreed with that. Like that we both have them in the same spot.
Yes, sir.
Number 8, TCU. Look, they're undefeated. They deserve to be in the top 10. But TCU has not looked great. They've had many games where I expected them to lose that game. Somehow they won it. Hats off to them for continuing an undefeated season. That will end this week against Texas, and then we don't have to talk about them anymore. They're a multi-touchdown underdog to Texas, a 3-loss Texas team.
I also have TCU at number 8 as well. So Ben and I, again, are both right on this. Listen, TCU, and this is the thing that doesn't make sense to me with the committee. The committee came out after they put out the rankings, and they always say, here's what we looked at. They said they looked at strength of schedule. Okay. TCU beat Colorado and scheduled Tarleton State. Those were their out-of-conference games. And they played at Southern Methodist. By the way, they struggled. It was an 8-point game. Their conference games, their tough games, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, all, by the way, which I think are out. Any of those teams ranked now? I think they're all unranked teams now. Those were all games at home. So their toughest road game was at Kansas. That's a fun story. That's about it, right? This team, and by the way, they're not crushing anybody. Like if you, well, they did crush Oklahoma, but I mean, Oklahoma's that's a different story.
Who hasn't
But
crushed
like,
Oklahoma this year?
yeah, exactly. But we've watched Tennessee annihilate Kentucky, right? We've watched Georgia annihilate Tennessee, right? We've watched Michigan just pummel teams. We've watched Ohio State pummel teams. Like, you cannot tell me you can watch a TCU game, watch an Ohio State game, and say, yeah, that's an apples to apples comparison. It doesn't even look the same. TCU's maybe got 2, 3 NFL guys on that roster. That's it. Ohio State's got maybe 15, right? It's just not the same. So I like TCU. They're winning.
Mm-hmm.
They should get credit for that, but we should not be putting them into the college football playoff. You guys made this mistake with Cincinnati last year, and we watched what happened when they played Alabama. It wasn't pretty. I don't really want to see TCU get lined up against Georgia in the college football semifinals and watch Georgia be bored by the second quarter.
And all of the fans be bored as well.
Everybody would be bored with that.
All right, number 7. It would. Number 7, Liberty. Not really.
Oh,
however, they should be
this close to like just getting booed.
They should be in the top 25.
Yes, we'll talk about that.
Nah. Number. Okay, perfect. Number 7, Alabama. Look, with 2 losses, on last second plays, being either a wobbly field goal on the road or in a 100,000 plus fan stadium of the opposing team, or a 2-point conversion in a 100,000 plus opposing team stadium. Once again, Alabama has 2 losses on the season, but they're still Alabama. They're still one of the best coached teams in the country, and they still have some of the best players in the country as well. And when you stack them up against most of these, like, it is, they could beat most of these teams.
I think it's a great point, Ben. We just don't give enough credit for how difficult it is to win on the road against a good college football team. Like, if you look at who Alabama's played on the road, at Tennessee, at LSU, at Texas, okay, the average attendance in those games is about 110,000. And Alabama's gone 1-2 in that stretch. Listen, I love Georgia. You give Georgia that same stretch, 3 road games being Texas, Tennessee, and LSU. I don't know that Georgia does 1-2. Like, I don't know that they do. And the Tennessee game, Alabama lost by a knuckleball field goal. The LSU game, they lost by a 2-point conversion. Like, I know the record says 7-2, but when people try to say Alabama shouldn't be a top 10 team or shouldn't be considered for the playoff, it's like, okay, what's obvious, you didn't actually watch the games. Because if you watched the games, you would realize that if you're going to argue that they're 7-2, and that's your reason for not putting them in there, they're almost 9-0. And if they were 9-0, everybody would have them either number 1 or number 2, no matter how close the LSU or the Tennessee games were, right? So you put those games in Bryant-Denny versus where they were, Alabama's sitting there at 9-0. So I'm with you, Ben. Actually, I'll get Alabama in a bit. I've got them ranked higher than 7.
Who you got at number 7?
All right, my number 7 actually is LSU. I think, this is what I predicted would be at the start of the year. I said LSU at the start of the year is going to be a little rougher on the edges. But you watch this team get closer towards the end of the year, it is going to be a completely different football team. And Ben, I told you last week, I thought there was some intrigue with them hosting Alabama, and I thought there was a chance they could pull off that upset. And they did. Brian Kelly, look, I'm telling you, he's weird. He's cringy. It's a little bit bizarre, but the guy's just a darn good football coach. And the thing is about LSU, this isn't even his team yet. You wait 2, 3, 4 years till
Yep.
he gets his players in, LSU's going to be humming. And I don't think it's a mistake that in his first year with LSU, he's already beaten the GOAT. So I love what LSU's doing. Um, it- Unfortunately, I just don't think a two-loss team is going to get into the playoff. So I think LSU's probably already out. But it is interesting, Ben. They're sitting there at seventh. Uh, Tennessee and Georgia can't win out the year. One of them is going to have a loss, right? Um, One of them should have a loss. Oregon may not win out the year. TCU, I think, is going to lose. And Ohio State and Michigan are going to play each other. So one of them is going to lose. So if you're going to argue for a two-loss team to get in, could LSU actually be the one to do that? I don't know. I think it would be interesting. But yeah, I've got them right there where the committee's got them at number 7.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right.
And
Who's
number 6, Tennessee. So look, Tennessee's got an incredible offense, not a great defense. Their offense has been outstanding until this past weekend. They were ranked number 1 in the college football playoff. That was a mistake. They couldn't handle the pressure, and they definitely couldn't handle the 7-man front of Georgia. Now, playing Georgia in Athens is challenging. Playing Georgia in the state of Georgia is tough. But man, Tennessee looks bad. However, they're still a solid team with a solid defense that has the possibility of finishing out the season with 1 loss. So, got to keep them up here. Got them at 6.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because they don't have a path to get back to the SEC championship now that they've lost that game. So they're going to play Missouri, South Carolina, Vandy, probably win all those games, but they can't really do anything, I think, to improve their resume at this point. So the resume, I mean, it's in. Tennessee did exactly what I thought they would be. The defense was not very good. It struggled against Georgia. We saw that same defense struggle with Alabama. We saw it struggle with Florida. We really saw it struggle against Pitt. That I think is their Achilles heel right now. Now it's not USC's defense. It's not UCLA's defensive woes. It's way better than that. But when they get into these big games, that's where they struggle to compete. My number 6 team is Alabama for basically all the reasons we just discussed. I don't think it's a bad team. They've got 2 road losses. They're extremely, extremely close. What I will say about Alabama that I think is keeping them out, and it's why they've lost, they are not as explosive as they've been the past couple of years. Like, been that receiving core this year, just not what it was last year, where you had John Mechie and Jamison Williams. Like that last year, I mean, Bryce Young had everybody to throw to, and now it's like they really don't have all of these elite weapons on the outside that they had last year. So Alabama's still a good team. The defense is wildly good. I think Bryce Young's probably the best quarterback in the country right now, including Hendon Hooker, just considering what he's got to work with. But
Yep.
there are some weaknesses, and that's why they've got some losses. So we got them at 6.
Yep. Completely agree. Alabama versus my number 5 team is happening this week. I've got Ole Miss at number 5.
Wow.
And so
Somebody really likes Ole Miss.
Look, Ole Miss right now is a 12-point dog. They're hosting Alabama. But their only loss on the season is to an LSU team that also just beat Alabama. LSU is picking up speed at that point, and I don't have LSU in my top 10. You know why? Because they played Auburn to the very end of that game, and it was close. Granted, I realize that was like 6 games ago. But if you can't beat the Auburn team that was under Brandon Harrison, you don't deserve to be in the top 10. And you can't beat them handily. And they did not do that. So, sorry, LSU. But the loss to LSU for Ole Miss does not look near as bad as it did at the time. And Ole Miss has the chance to beat Alabama this season. It's something that Lane Kiffin has tried to do for a long, long time. This is probably his best opportunity to do it since he's been at Ole Miss. They're hosting Alabama. They just have to come and play. Can they do it? We'll see. Maybe, maybe not. But in the off chance that they do, then that boosts them up. I've got them at this point until they lose that game.
Mm-hmm.
Got my number 5.
My number 5 team is Tennessee. So, look, I think the offense is spectacular. And I mean, people want to rank USC in their top 10 because of USC's offense. Here's the thing: USC's offense isn't as good as Tennessee's offense, right? And I get a better defense. I also think Josh Heupel is just a really, really good coach. Like, Tennessee looks like a really good team situationally. And that Georgia game, like, that's going to be Tennessee's blemish. But even in that game, Georgia storms out to this big lead. Tennessee kind of started to reel it in. Like, you look at the score and it's like 27-13 doesn't actually sound that bad, right? Well, Tennessee started to slow the game down and reel it in and kind of figure things out a little bit. So the fact that they're able to do that, I mean, I think that game would have gotten away from just about every other team you've listed in the top 10 so far. Like, I think it would have been an annihilation. It was against Oregon, right? But Tennessee, I think, is a really good team. Hendon Hooker, I think, deserves to be a Heisman candidate. So I've got him at 5.
Didn't Tennessee allow like a 45-yard rushing touchdown to Georgia's quarterback?
Bennett, yeah, I
I
think
feel like it was something like that. Yeah, that was a little embarrassing.
Yeah, it was.
Reeling it in near the end, sure. At my number 4, I have a team that you don't think very highly of, and I've crapped on a couple of times during this: the USC Trojans. And here's why. We were talking about Alabama and how they've had last-second losses, and people are all losing hope on them. Well, the only loss that USC has is a 2-point conversion on the road against Utah, a decent Utah team, a Utah team who won the Pac-12 last year. So if USC does not let that 2-point conversion happen by a giant quarterback that's up the middle, then USC is undefeated right now and definitely going to be in the top 4. And a question of where do they land when it comes to the college football playoff. So
the problem
for the same
USC
reason,
struggled with Cal. They struggled with Arizona. They struggled with Arizona State. They struggled with Oregon State. They struggled with Stanford in the second half. Like, there's just so many games where they struggle, and it's because of the defense. Like, they're good. They're winning games. But, Ben, if they played any other team that you're going to put in your top 4, there's no way they would even be competitive, because it's like USC has Caleb Williams. Well, that's great. Well, Caleb Williams isn't a leap in, like, a giant leap from CJ Stroud. They're about at the same level. The difference is Ohio State also has this insane receiving core, this insane running back, a really good defense, and USC has really nothing to give Caleb Williams except an injured Jordan Addison. That's really about it.
When Jordan Addison went out against Utah, other players stepped up. Yeah, they're not amazing. They're an old coach that got fired recruits, besides the ones that they were able to sign during the transfer portal. But they're still a really good team from a bunch of players that are not typical USC talent to come together and be able to put on the performance they've done this season. Yeah, they're not beating teams like a drum, but they're winning. And they're beating
honestly,
teams decently.
Jordan Addison, Mario Williams, Caleb Williams, those are the only 2 guys I would argue definitively are going to end up on NFL rosters at some point in the future on that team. I could probably pick out 15 guys on Ohio State's roster that's going to end up on an NFL roster. Just don't think it's the same. Now, my number 4 team is UNC. No.
You haven't said Oregon yet, right?
Number 4 is Oregon, actually. Yeah, I feel like with
You,
what I'm doing with Oregon, it's progressively becoming a more complete team with every week that goes on. Like the team that beat Colorado, they just pummeled Colorado. They pummeled Cal. Things, by the way, that USC could not do. They pummeled UCLA. Like they're scoring a ton of points. The defense is really good. They've got an amazing front seven. By the way, you look at their schedule. They're going to get ranked Washington at home. That'll be tomorrow. They're going to get ranked Utah at home. That'll be next week. And then they're going to end the year at Oregon State, a good team that they should beat. So that's 3 wins they're going to get to add to their resume, right? I think by the time they do that, their resume is going to be comparable to Tennessee's. Their only loss is going to be a game where they went cross country to Atlanta and got pummeled by Georgia, but first game of the year. And since then, it's just become a completely different football team. Bo Nix, I mean, he should be, I think, Ben, honestly, if he plays like this these next 3 games, put Bo Nix on the Heisman race. He deserves to be there
I
with
agree.
what he's doing. And by the way, here's the other thing. Oregon was a good football team last year, not a great one, but a good one. Cristobal leaves. And Miami looks awful. And Oregon looks like a much better coach team.
Yep.
Right? I don't think that is a coincidence. I think Cristobal has been holding this team back. And I think the more that I watch this team, it's like they're getting crap together. They don't get penalized a lot. They don't turn it over a lot. They've got a good pass rush. They've got great outside weapons. They can run the ball. They've got a great quarterback. What is it about this team that I don't like? I like their defense better than Tennessee's, by the way. Like 100%. I would take Oregon's defense over Tennessee's right now. I like their offense as much as I like Ohio State's offense. So this is not, in my opinion, Georgia or Michigan yet. But the more I watch them, Ben, Ohio State feels like they're making their way up that list.
All right. You got Oregon there, number 4. And number 3, I have Michigan. This was tough for me because
the top
2
3 is
teams.
bizarre. The top 3 is crazy, Tom.
Yeah. So I really, really like Michigan. But some weeks I feel like they're good, and some weeks I feel like they're exceptional.
Yes.
And I can't tell which Michigan team I'm going to get each week. Do I think they're going to win each week? Yes. Do I think they're going to look competent each week? Maybe half the game. Do I think they're going to blow a team out? There's a chance, and it happens, but not every week. It's weird because within the top, I guess, the next 2 that I have, Michigan and number 2, I've seen really good performances, and I've seen okay performances. Not mediocre. They're good. Yeah. But it's not like this team is in drive, at every pace of the game. Sometimes they're in like first or second gear. You just don't know. So this Michigan at number 3.
This is a really great point, and I'm going to go ahead and give you my next 3 teams. So my 3 through 1. Okay. So I have Ohio State at number 3. I have Michigan at number 2. I have Georgia at number 1. And I was very close to putting Michigan at number 1 because of exactly, like literally exactly what you just said. Michigan at their best, no team has looked as good as they have when they're at their best. The problem is they are not at that on a consistent basis.
Week in and week out.
Yeah, and I have seen this before. Like remember LSU with Joe Burrow, right? They had some games that year where you were just like, oh my God, this is different, right? And then they had a couple of games that year where you're like, wait, why are they struggling with, I think it was like Mississippi State or something, right? And it was very much the same. Like when LSU was at their absolute best, they were better than everybody else. But they weren't like that on a consistent basis. Now, here's the thing, though. once they got into that SEC championship game, like when they played Bama, when they played the SEC championship game and those two semifinal games, they were different and they found it on a consistent basis. And I think some of that is when you have a team that is chock full of just first, second, third round draft picks, and they're playing Rutgers one week and Michigan State another week and Indiana one week. It's like, can you keep them motivated to play that on a consistent basis? So I think we may not know it because of what you just said, but I think Michigan actually could be in a different class than everybody else, and we just don't know that yet. And maybe we'll find out against Ohio State. Now, Ohio State, I have at number 3. I have not seen that same pop that I've seen from Michigan, but Ohio State's been much more consistent. The defense has been very, very good. Now, I don't know what in the heck they were doing against Northwestern. That game was absolutely bizarre. But other than that,
the wind.
You can, yeah, maybe so. I mean, I don't know. Even then, Ohio State, like, all right, the wind shouldn't stop your run game. You should still just be able to run over a team even with the wind. That's what's a little bit like, what in the heck's going on? And so that's why I put him at 3. But again, CJ Stroud, he's great. The receiving core is great. And then at number 1, I have Georgia. And here's the thing. I just feel like if I start writing down the negatives of Georgia, I just feel like I'm nitpicking, right? Like I want to say Georgia's being held back by Stetson Bennett, but then it's like I watch him, I'm like, he's not an NFL quarterback. That's fine, but he's a really darn good college football quarterback, right? Like he fits the Georgia system so well. His stats are through the roof. The offense is explosive with him. No, he cannot throw a 35-yard touch pass on a receiver running, a hot route. Like, he can't do that, right? Like that post route, 35 yards downfield, he cannot hit that. But by God, the guy can hit an out route. The guy can hit a slant. The guy can hit a hitch. Like he can hit all that stuff, right? And he's got some wheels on him too, so he can run the RPO even. Like he does what you need to do to have an extremely good offense in college football. So I don't know what about Georgia I would nitpick at this point. I know they had that weird game earlier in the year with was it like Arkansas State? No, it was a MAC team. Was it Toledo?
Dude, I can't remember.
I think it was Kent State.
Maybe it was Kent State.
Yeah. They played that weird game, and that's kind of where we're all like, what is this? Right? But then we saw the game against Tennessee. Georgia's really, really good, guys. Like, I don't know what else to say. Georgia's really, really good. So that's my number 1 team right now.
Yep. So with Michigan and why I put them at number 3, when they played Rutgers last week, they were losing 17-14.5. I was like, what is this? There's no crazy wind hurricane there. With Ohio State against Northwestern, I was like, okay, well, 60-mile-an-hour winds, it's kind of hard for CJ Stroud to throw into that. But you're right. They should have understood they were dealing with and then changed the game plan accordingly. Ryan Day is a good coach. Like, just change your game plan, bro. You've got incredible talent across the board. Just lateral it down the field or something.
And that, by the way, has been a consistent criticism for Ryan Day is he never makes second half adjustments, like ever. That's why they lose those big playoff games. Like they'll come out, they'll be great in the first half, and then you get into halftime, it's like he doesn't change anything about the team, and then they're getting pummeled all of a sudden.
Yep. So Bryan Harsin used to do stuff like that. Glad he's gone. Or your 21 minutes, sir. Number 1, UGA. Look, Georgia for most of the season has been the number 1 team. They've had a couple weeks where it's just like, what are you guys doing? And they played down to their competition. But at the end of the day, they're the most talented team. They're the most complete team. And there's a good chance they repeat this year.
Yeah. All right.
Top 10.
There's your top 10. Yes, sir. Got it done. All right. Let's go on to our mailbag, which is always fun. John Luis LaPierre, he wrote in and said, should we grant every team 1 game of forgiveness?
Well, if I was CJ Sweat, then I would say yes.
Yeah, that's exactly why he wrote this
Uh,
question, was to defend me. No, I think we should, but I think we've got to be particular about where, like, what's the circumstance, right? Like,
mhm.
I think first game of the year with Oregon, that has to be judged differently than what are you doing week 10 and week 11, you know? And the reason why, like, and even Alabama, like, I love Alabama. I think Nick's great. But if you look at that roster, I think it's obvious at this point they're dealing with some injuries. They do not look explosive. This is not even the same team that we saw in week one, right? So I'd be okay to say, okay, well, I'm not going to forgive Alabama for the game against LSU. Like that, I'm not going to forgive, right? So they get the one against Tennessee, but I'm not forgiving LSU. But I think we got to look at a team like Oregon and we got to say, let's forgive them for that. I think we got to look at LSU and say, let's not judge LSU for losing to Florida State, who, by the way, is starting to play good football. That's actually become a pretty good football team, right? Let's not judge LSU for losing to Florida State at the start of the year. Those were new coaching staffs, new quarterbacks coming in, new teams, and it's week one. There's no preseason with this thing. They should get a week to kind of figure it out.
Well, since I'm not CJ Sweat, I'm going to disagree with you because I don't think that you should forgive anyone of a game that they lost, especially when they get beat 49-3. I know it was the first week of the season. Don't care.
So when we get into
The
a 12-team playoff next year, would you not put Oregon in?
I definitely would put Oregon in. I'd say, yeah,
Okay.
you're number 12. There you go. Congratulations. Or they probably wouldn't be number 12. I've got them in my top 10.
Okay.
So, yeah. But I would also have a one-loss Tennessee in there. And maybe I'd have the two play each other. So I think it keeps them out of even if Oregon ran the table right now, I think that 49-3 loss keeps them out of the playoff, the 14 playoff. Doesn't keep them out of the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I get that, but if we're gonna keep Oregon out, we should keep TCU out too. Like
I agree.
Yeah. If we're gonna
TCU
make it
shouldn't be in our
exclusive,
top 10. They won't be in my top 10 next week once they lose to Texas.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right. Next question. This comes from Francine in Hurricane, West Virginia. She says, "Who is most likely to not Hurricane, West Virginia is a real place, by the way. Don't be hating.
Thank you
There's
for
more.
writing in, Francine. We appreciate you.
Who is most likely to not recover, Clemson or Bama?"
Clemson.
Yes.
Because Clemson's been hobbling around all season long. DJ Uiagalelei, who I learned how to pronounce his name because I thought he was the next big thing. That's what Dabo was telling us. I just haven't seen it, bro.
No.
He said you had more talent than Trevor Lawrence. Well, then why don't you perform like it?
Why don't you throw a crossing route 10 yards down the field and complete it? My God. No, Ben, it doesn't make any sense. Like, Clemson got destroyed. I mean, destroyed by a Notre Dame
By a
team
3-loss
that
Notre Dame
lost
team.
to Stanford 3 weeks ago.
Uh-huh.
Pathetic. They didn't play Stanford on the road, which, by the way, now that Stanford has a road environment, they played them at home. Like, this Notre Dame team lost to Marshall and they lost to Stanford, but they destroyed Clemson. Like, I honestly, Ben, I think Clemson at this point, and they'll be a good program. They're always going to be a good program. They were a good program. But I think this era of Clemson competing in the playoff year in and year out, I think we're past that.
Well, not when it becomes 12. They'll still win the ACC every year.
Yeah, no, that I don't doubt. Although honestly, I could see UNC beating Clemson in the ACC championship this year. That I could see.
Yeah,
and Pittsburgh won it last year.
That's
all
true.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about. All right, so we got another write-in mailbag here. Speaking of Alabama, so this comes from See, what would be if you were going to marry your first cousin because you were an Alabama fan? What would your first cousin's name be? Tabitha.
But there you go. Like
Wait,
it.
were you going to say Bethesda?
I was.
That's a city in Maryland, you goofball.
That's okay.
All right, let's go with Beth.
Tabitha. I like Tabby.
You like Tabitha? She goes by Tabby, by the way.
Yeah, let's do it.
100%
Yeah.
goes by Tabby. Yeah,
Perfect.
and she's married to a Camden, not Camden, not Caden, but a Camden.
Perfect.
It's her first. Yeah. Everybody look up Tabby and Camden on their wedding registry. See if you find somebody. All right. So Tabby writes in, was Nick Saban's success built on the SEC having a bunch of crappy coaches?
No. Nick Saban's success was that he built a program where he recruited decent talent and developed them into excellent players. Now, in the current world, it doesn't necessarily work because of the way the game has changed.
Yeah.
But when Saban came in with a game plan originally where he ran a pro-style offense, and then as the game changed, he changed with it. And now it's just a lot harder to change when your entire program is built around players coming in and devoting themselves to it for 4 years. And now you've got transfer portal players that are just bouncing around the world. So I have to change again.
So,
but that's why.
Right.
It's because the program was the process that Saban would call it. It was a real thing.
I would agree. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to answer this question very strategically. I think technically, no. But I think it played a part into it because I think every big dynasty is a big dynasty because of what is surrounding you. Go to Pete Carroll at USC. It was a great dynasty. And then Jim Harbaugh gets into Stanford. And then Chip Kelly gets into Oregon. And all of a sudden you get some good coaches around Pete. And it's like he can't just win every year. Like they can't just go 12-0 every year because he's playing good coaches now. Look at Brady and Belichick in the AFC East. Part of them always being in the playoffs and always having a chance to get to the Super Bowl is the fact that the Bills were terrible. The Dolphins were terrible. The Jets were the Jets. Awful, right? As soon as the Bills got a good head coach, all of a sudden, Patriots start getting pushed around a little bit. Brady leaves out of town, right? It kind of starts that destruction. And yes, I think you look at Saban, and part of Saban's success is the fact that he coached against Tommy Tuberville for so many years. I think part of it is he coached against Ed Orgeron. I think part of it is that Mark Richt was always holding Georgia back. I think that's fairly obvious at this point. Mark Richt was a good coach, right? You had some good coaches in there, but you did not have Kirby Smarts. You did not have Josh Waples. You did not have Brian Kelly's. You didn't have a guy like Lane Kiffin, who is a brilliant coach that could easily be leading a top 10 team right now. You did not have him at Ole Miss. I mean, when you look at the SEC now, I've got 8, 9 great coaches, and then I've got guys like Shane Beamer, like who's a good coach, right? I've got guys like Mark Stoops at Kentucky building a legit program, right? And then you've got guys, and this is why I always complain about Jimbo Fisher at Texas A&M. I don't think he's in the same class as those guys. And I think the more he's there, the more he's getting exposed. So it doesn't mean that Alabama can't win another championship at all. I think they can. I think they will. But I do think the constant Alabama being in the playoff and in the championship year in and year out and just dominating the country has been because the SEC, though super talented, really has had a bunch of crappy head coaches. Like since Saban has been at Bama, every SEC team has replaced their head coach twice, except for Georgia. There's a reason for
Yep.
it. So, great question, Tabby and Kingdom.
Good job, Tabby. Are we going to get to Malik Willis's question soon? He took time out
Yeah.
of his busy NFL schedule to write us.
So, Malik Willis wrote in and said, should Liberty be ranked in the college football playoff? I'm going to take the lead on this one, and I'll flip it over to you. All right.
Perfect.
The answer is yes, but I understand why they aren't. Here's the thing. If you're Liberty, right, well, here's why they should be ranked. One, you can't tell me Central Florida should be ranked and Liberty shouldn't be. Central Florida got destroyed by East Carolina. Liberty does not have a game like that on their resume. Central Florida didn't play anybody in out of conference. And what you're telling me is the committee came out and said the reason we're not ranking Liberty is because of their out of conference schedule. Liberty doesn't play in a conference. What are you talking about? Liberty went and played at Wake Forest. They played at Arkansas. They played BYU. They're winning these games. They've got one loss by a point to Wake Forest. That resume is so much better than Central Florida. I don't understand how you can watch Liberty. Not only, and if you watch the Liberty Arkansas game, this is what was so infuriating. Liberty went to an SEC team and pushed them around for 4 quarters. That was supposed to be the best offensive line in the SEC, and Liberty's defensive line dominated the line of scrimmage. They looked like an SEC defensive line. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Liberty's got one of the best front sevens in the country. They should be ranked. But here's where I will defend the committee a little bit. The 1-point win over Gardner-Webb, the struggle against Akron, the struggle against UMass. Now, I get why they struggled with Gardner-Webb. Hugh Freeze wanted to sit a bunch of people in preparation for the BYU game. And if you told me, would I take blowing out Gardner-Webb but losing to BYU, or playing a close game with Gardner-Webb and beating BYU the way they did, I would take it exactly how it's set up. But at the same time, from the committee's point of view, when you have a 1-point win over Gardner-Webb, that is a really tough pill for them to swallow to rank a team like Liberty. And yes, I'm sorry, it's a beauty pageant. I can't help it. That's what college football is. So when you're Liberty, you cannot leave any doubt on the table. So the only real way for Liberty to be ranked right now is they should have crushed Gardner-Webb. They should have crushed Akron. And they struggled in those games, and they struggled against UMass. And the committee's sitting there watching it like, we don't want to rank a team that is not even a high brand group of 5 team. We don't want to rank them when they are barely surviving against crap competition. So the Arkansas game's great. The BYU game's great. But when we look at what happened with Gardner-Webb, we can't get over that hump. And I wouldn't have changed a thing, but I understand why the committee's got them where they do.
Yeah, well, Malik, first I want to say thanks for writing in. War Eagle, hope you're enjoying the NFL. Wish we'd gotten to see you play on the Plains. Glad that you had a good run at Liberty.
Yeah.
Should Liberty be...
Why couldn't you score against Kansas City at the end of that game? What the heck? Cost them you money. Took the Titans on the money line. So.
Oh, man. They'll get better. Should Liberty be in the top 25? Absolutely. If Liberty had gotten a 2-point conversion against Wake Forest, they'd be one of the last undefeated teams. Currently, there are 4 undefeated teams. There would be 5 for that. 2-point conversion against the Wake Forest team who was very good last year, decent this year. And this is on the road. Yes, they don't play in a conference. They're going to join one, but I don't think conferences necessarily matter. Notre Dame is not in a conference, and you have them at number 20. They have 3 losses, and they are not good losses. Now, the wins, however, are good, and maybe at the time of the season it wasn't great, but you have Liberty where they beat BYU, they beat Arkansas, and yeah, the end score didn't look as impressive as it did early on, but they were up 21-3 against Arkansas until late in the fourth quarter. So I think this Liberty team has looked incredible. I understand the way that Hugh Freeze is managing that team because of just the talent level. And even if they're not, above Tulane, which they probably should be, and Tulane's at number 17, they should at least be in the top 25 with the record they've been able to put in place.
Yeah.
So, great question, Malik.
All right. So we're going to go over to our next mailbag question. This comes from Caleb Jackson Sweet. So this
Sweet?
question
Is that a cousin?
And no, and this is specifically for Ben. So I'm not even going to answer this one. Hugh Freeze, Lane Kiffin, Dion, or Caddy? Who are you taking? Caddy being Cadillac Williams. For those of you who don't, I know you know.
Yeah. Yeah, Cadillac Williams. That's so tough because I think I'd say the one who's going to bring the most to the program the quickest, but then probably leave the soonest is Lane Kiffin.
Where would he leave to?
Where would he leave to? Alabama.
You think he'd leave Auburn to go to Alabama?
Yeah.
That would be the
I think
most
he wants the Alabama job.
Well, I do too. But here's the thing. If he wants the Alabama job, I don't think he would take the Auburn.
Don't go to Auburn. I agree.
Yeah, he's going to get Ole Miss.
So I think he's going to say no.
If he did that, if he left Ole Miss to go to Auburn, then to go to Alabama, like hire security detail.
Yeah. No, I think when it comes to who replaces Nick Saban, Lane Kiffin wants to be in the pole position for that. And I think it's between Dabo and Kiffin, honestly.
Yeah.
And Dabo right now, he'd have to turn something around at Clemson. Maybe they're just a single quarterback away from that. I don't know. But
right.
I think Kiffin probably wants that. So I'd say make Kiffin say no, but he probably will. I think Dion is probably the best personality. And I would love to see kind of those press conferences and the way that he handles himself, the way he recruits. I don't think he'd do well at Auburn, honestly. The boosters suck, and they control everything. Hugh Freeze would build an incredible program. What he's been able to do at Liberty is just awe-inspiring. He did the same thing at Ole Miss. He'd make us an incredible, even with the talent and everything and the facilities he would build a very good program for a long time. But I don't know if we get him because of kind of what he has at Liberty right now, and the Auburn job is not as tasty as it probably should be.
$5 million a year with no expectations, pretty sweet gig.
Yeah. So it's between probably Hugh and Caddy for me. Depending on kind of how the rest of the season goes, though, I think it would be just incredible for Auburn to take an Auburn guy and have him as the head coach, at least just for a few years at minimum, to build the program back to where it needs to be. I think Cadillac could do that. I'd give him a 5-year deal.
Okay. So Cadillac would be your pick.
Well, by the way, it'd be Hugh Freeze. It would be so in the order of the way I would have them go is first make Lane Kiffin say no, then make Hugh Freeze say no, then promote Cadillac like you probably should have to begin with.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I think Hugh Freeze, like on paper, that's the best coach I think available to Auburn. Well, and I don't even know if he's available to Auburn. Honestly, I think Hugh Freeze may look at it like, I'm not going to dysfunctional Auburn.
The stress level would be X what he has today.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something I would compare this to. Years ago, David Cutcliffe was being courted by Tennessee when he was at Duke. And David Cutcliffe turned Tennessee down to stay at Duke. And the reason he did it, I think a lot of it had to do with just the dysfunction at Tennessee. He didn't want anything to do with Jimmy Haslam. Like, it's literally like, I'm not going there. Jimmy Haslam's like the craziest booster. I'm just not doing it. This doesn't a dysfunctional place. And I think this could be very similar circumstance where Hugh Freeze is like, look, I love being at Liberty. Like, I don't have crazy boosters I really have to worry about here. I don't really have to answer to anybody but Ian McCall. I'm getting paid $5 million a year. We're winning games. I can recruit here. I can really continue to build this program up. You go to Auburn, and it doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter what you do. Like, honestly, having success at Auburn makes the boosters worse. Like, it almost like gives them more leverage as to how you can run your program. So I don't know that he would leave for Auburn. But kind of like what you were saying, he would be my first call. Lane Kiffin would be number 2. And I think both of them probably will turn them down. And I think Cadillac Williams is the perfect coach for them. I think he can stand up to boosters. I think he can recruit. I think he's, to me, shown he can lead a locker room at the very least. I like him a lot, and I love his energy, by the way. Love his energy. Like, Auburn's terrible,
Same.
but his energy on the sidelines is just electric. Like, how can you not
We sold out the Texas A&M game.
That's amazing.
Auburn sold out. It's the first packed game this entire season. A 3 and what are we? 3 and 6? 3 and 6 Auburn versus 3 and 6 Texas A&M. Packed stadium.
That is incredible. And Auburn's lost 5 straight.
Yep. So is Texas A&M. We are literally playing for who is worse in the SEC. The loser of this game will be that.
So you got A&M this weekend, Western Kentucky next weekend. So you could win both of those, but then you're going to end with the Iron Bowl. So there's no chance of Auburn getting the ball.
Oh, there's a chance.
How? They'd be 5 and 7. Can you get in with 5 wins?
Nah, 6 and 6.
Not if they lose to Bama.
They won't lose to Bama. That's the chance.
When's the last time you went into Bryant-Denny and won? Was that the kick 6?
2010. No, the kick 6 was in Auburn.
That was in Auburn.
2010, the comeback.
The reverse
season. I was there.
What do you call it? Rammer Jammer. Reverse Rammer Jammer.
Yeah, the pass to the tight end.
Yeah.
Yep.
The best part about that was the Auburn band playing Rammer Jammer with Aubie in Bryant-Denny Stadium. That is on YouTube. That is my favorite college football band clip ever. I probably watch that once a year for the football season. I'm gonna watch that again tonight. It's so good.
I will too.
It is so good.
Look out in a couple weeks. Do it again.
All right.
Cadillac Williams.
I don't think it's happening again. Unless Cam Newton somehow suits up for them, which would be about as illegal as when he did it the first time. Oh, that was good. That was so good. I saved that for an hour and 4 minutes into the podcast.
Oh, man. I think he technically still has eligibility. So he can come back as a grad student.
Wait, you can't have eligibility once you go to the NFL, though.
Can you not?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I know J.R. Smith is out playing golf right now for NCANT, the former basketball player.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Cam Newton can come back. If he could, that'd be so funny.
I think he still has a year of eligibility if he's allowed to play post-pro.
Yeah, you can't play post-pro. There's no way. All right.
That would happen a lot more, I guess.
Yeah. All right.
Tom Brady would go back to Michigan.
All right. Any closing thoughts here, Ben?
Week 11. Here we come. It's been a great season so far. Good games this weekend. Get ready for
Hey,
them.
by the way, your USC Trojans, they're currently losing 3-2.
To Colorado? It's 8-1
Yes.
versus 1-8.
You want to redo
Oh
your
my
top 10 real
gosh.
quick?
No. They're just not used to playing on a Friday night.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it. They're only hosting
They'll turn it
Colorado.
around.
It's only 3rd and 19 at their own 19. God, if Colorado beats USC at USC, that would
That
be
would be the funniest thing.
Oh my word. Like, is it a little bit surprising that Tennessee is only a 19.5-point favorite against Missouri?
I don't know.
Okay.
There's a good chance that Missouri and Arkansas play each other for bowl eligibility in 3 weeks.
Yeah. I tell you who I love this weekend. Purdue is a 6.5-point dog at Illinois. I'm going to take Purdue on the money line.
What about that matchup, LSU at Arkansas? LSU is a
Staying the heck
3.5-point
away.
favorite.
I think Arkansas is a mess. And like you mentioned, it would not. Goodness, we're getting like all these weird like chat crap coming out on YouTube.
Oh, really? Hi, people.
Oh yeah. No, it's like terrible stuff. I keep having to block people. Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
They should give us money. Give us a super chat.
Yeah. And it's like people are trying to promote their OnlyFans or something going on. No, but like you said before, like when we were starting the podcast, Arkansas is capable of pulling off an upset, and LSU is capable of laying an egg that game. So I'm staying away from that completely. Bama's a 12-point favorite at Ole Miss.
What's Ole Miss's thing?
A shark?
Hottie toddy. There we go.
Hottie toddy.
Hottie toddy. Yeah. The.
Can you do that again?
Nope.
Okay.
You can go back and watch the replay and take a screenshot.
Let's see what else. Okay, so Texas a 7 and I thought I saw 17.5. Oh well, still 7.5-point favorite over TCU.
It's still more than a touchdown favorite.
Yeah. Wake Forest a 4-point favorite against UNC. That seems interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Who's going to win the ACC this year?
Well, hold on. So this is juicy. If UNC were to lose out and Duke were to win out, Duke could get into the ACC championship game.
That'd be insane.
That would be amazing.
Well, let's go Demon Deacons.
Let's go Demon Deacons.
Start that out.
So here's the other thing. If UNC loses out and Georgia Tech beats Miami and UNC and Duke drops a game, Georgia Tech could get into the ACC championship.
6-6 Georgia Tech going to the ACC championship.
Yeah. By the way, UNC has not lost a conference game yet. Just throwing that out there. Who did I pick to win the ACC Coastal then, just as a reminder?
UNC.
UNC. Yeah, that's what I thought. I told you they were going to do that.
Yep. You said they'd be good.
Yeah.
Man.
Wish
they had lost to Duke.
What's the line on Tech Duke this weekend? I'd say Duke by 6. Duke by 9.5.
Woo-hoo!
I can't remember the last time Duke was almost a double-digit favorite against Virginia Tech. I don't think that's ever happened.
Yep. Chokey sucks.
That's incredible. And Pitt is a 6-point favorite on the road at UVA. That's interesting.
When does Virginia Tech realize their mistake, fire the head coach they hired, and go get Baby Beamer like I told them to?
Baby Beamer ain't going up to Tech.
Why not?
Because he's got a great thing in South Carolina. South Carolina and Tech are equal.
$10 million a year. That'll move you.
Tech can't pay, dude. Tech doesn't have Liberty money. They certainly don't have SEC money.
You gotta go mine some more Hokie Stone.
Yeah,
start shipping that out.
There ain't no way. I mean, they kept Justin Fuente around just to avoid paying his buyout.
Killed the program. Hey,
Yeah.
I love it.
I know you
Keep
do.
this joker around. If Virginia Tech didn't win a single game, if Hokie to UConn, I'd be all for it.
If what?
If Hokies became the new UConn, I'd be all for it.
I don't think that's going to happen, but they're in some trouble for sure. All right, let's hop off there before we get more weird comments on their YouTube channel, because I don't know what has happened over there. It's gotten all insane for some reason. All right. This is the Fourth String Podcast. Appreciate you guys joining us on a Friday night. I'm going to bed.